Probably bigger than the introduction of the iPhone, Ozempic has just rocked the world. But although for its popularity and ability to actually create weight loss, there's something dangerous underneath the surface that 90% of people don't actually realize. Now, full disclaimer, I am not a doctor, but I'm gonna be giving you all of the information directly from those who are or are experts in the field of GLP-1 receptor agonists, which is the core of what Ozempic is, Ozempic being the brand name. All of the clips are gonna be referenced at the end if you want the full context, but I'm gonna be showing you it as we go. For starters, what's crazy is that what most people don't realize, and I didn't for the longest time either, is that Ozempic, or semaglutide, which is the generic form of it, is actually not a drug. It's actually what's called a peptide.
And it turns out it's a peptide, and I'm very familiar with peptides from the regenerative medicine space. And I was like, this is a peptide. Why has it been appropriated by a pharmaceutical company or two? And it's because of the delivery, because it's injectable. So it's not really a drug, it's a peptide, and peptides are just strings of amino acids, and strings of peptides are proteins.
Now, by this point, you probably don't need a definition of what Ozempic is and what it does, but this peptide has people in Hollywood, Oprah Winfrey and others like her, going absolutely crazy because this peptide seems to magically create weight loss due to a massive decrease in appetite. But what's crazy is that the GLP-1 agonist is actually connected to another hormone that will help you naturally lose weight. And I actually want to be able to show you how to do that without actually paying an arm and a leg. Because yes, this stuff is ridiculously expensive. Upwards of like $1,000 a month, but more on that in just a minute. Now, I have listened to hours and hours of content on Ozempic over the past couple years, but I really just didn't want to speak on it. But after researching it further, there is something really vital that almost everyone is missing. But first, it goes without saying that obviously this peptide has blown up for its ability to help people lose weight. I mean, there's been nothing like it on the market up to date, but it was actually originally for diabetics. So with the popularity of it now, there's been some talk, whether true or not, it's really hard to tell, about shortages because the product is in such high demand. And ultimately, if that's the case, then that's really not good because we do want this peptide to be able to be available for the people that actually need it, people with diabetes, people with really struggling with obesity. But that does actually raise the question of, who is this actually for? Now, it's been typically recommended for those with a BMI of around 30 or higher. But the fascinating thing is that a lot of people are just using it for aesthetic reasons, to lose that last little 5 to 10 pounds and really get the aesthetic look that you want, in particular in Hollywood. But the question is it worth taking considering that it does have some pretty significant side effects? Because for me as a dad of 4, I want to pull all the levers that I can naturally to optimize my health. And really, I don't want to be dependent on something that is exogenous, something that is outside of my body that I have to inject. But considering that, the author of the book Magic Pill, Johan Hari, actually boils this down really well.
But against that, you have to weigh, and this always comes back with all these risks, to what is the cancer risk just from being obese and continuing to be obese? So whenever you're looking at the risks of these drugs, and that thyroid cancer is risk is alarming, and it's why, if anyone listening, if you have thyroid cancer in your family, anyone who has any reason to believe they're at risk of that, I'd say it should weigh very heavily on you, that risk. Again, you've got to weigh it against these, what for a lot of people realistically will be the risk of obesity. As Dr. Shauna Levy, who's an obesity specialist at Tulane University School of Medicine in New Orleans, said to me, we don't know the long-term risks of these drugs, but we do know the long-term risks of obesity, and they are shocking.
Now, for me, I've never been one to want to stick myself with a needle or take anything, that's lab made, because I deeply and truly believe that we all have the ability to be able to do this naturally. Some, yes, more than others. But my recommendation on this, which actually might surprise you, is somewhat unique, but a little bit more on that later. Because most people, when they take this, they're voluntarily stepping into a prison that there is no going back from. And unfortunately, the culture around this and the way that it's typically prescribed is driving that even more. Because although it's pretty clear that these peptides are amazingly powerful at helping people to lose weight, what's fascinating is the way that it's done through actually curbing appetite, which most drugs in the past have been on trying to increase energy expenditure. But these work because your appetite can actually be massively crushed, and therefore you just can't eat.
Let me in, I'm starving!
Now don't get overexcited. Don't lose your head, Augustus.
But what most people don't realize is that the biggest negative side effect of this is that it will potentially cause you to become a slave to using this drug, and you will be stuck on it for the rest of your life. Because it will potentially cause a wasting away of the one thing that you actually need to be able to stay lean: muscle. By way of the experts, let me explain.
I'll tell you what's wrong with it. Almost without exception, every patient we've put on this drug has lost muscle mass, and they have lost it at a rate that alarms me. It's not uncommon if you weigh 200 pounds and you go down to 180 pounds, that you're going to lose some muscle, some fat. But let's be clear, if you lost 10 pounds of muscle and 10 pounds of fat to go from 180 to 200, would that be good? Well, only if you were more than 50% body fat at the outset. Otherwise, you've disproportionately lost muscle to fat. In fact, you've gotten fatter as you've lost weight. That's not what we want.
That's why I've been telling people to strength. Like, I'm like, deadlift and eat steak. I've been saying it for as long as I can. My mentor before me taught me that, like lift weights and eat meat. It's so incredibly important that we don't around with our muscle. And as we get older, especially us ladies, it's terrible how hard it is to keep it on. Like, it's a chore to keep the muscle on. So if you're not actively fighting for your muscle, meaning you're not in the gym 2 to 3 times a week, lifting heavy, you're already losing, right? And if you're under eating on top of it with something, whether you're under eating on your own or under eating with the use of Ozempic or abusing it, you are setting yourself up for a disaster. And I think that's the problem. You're right. People want the quick fix, but they also have no concept of what the long game is.
Now, GLP-1s are not inherently in and of themselves muscle wasting. A lot of studies have actually shown that in some way they are a kind of anabolic or muscle preserving. But what happens is that for the mass majority of people, they're taking high doses of these, the typical standard doses that are in Ozempic pens. And when you massively crush your appetite, you massively reduce your caloric intake and your nutrient intake. Therefore, you eat way less. When you're eating very little, no matter what intervention is causing it, whether it's just a typical calorie deficit or if it's through something like semaglutide, what happens is your body deprioritizes muscle because it's trying to conserve energy. So you're gonna lose fat, but that's not all the weight you're gonna lose. When you lose weight, it's weight across the board. It could be body fat, it could be lean tissue, it could be muscle, it could be water weight, because during that time, your body becomes very catabolic in order to try to conserve energy. And essentially what that means is your body, in a way, is eating away the muscle. And what's crazy is muscle is metabolically expensive. It requires energy. It burns more calories. And all of the studies will show time and time again, it promotes longevity. So you want it. You want the muscle. And the sad part is that most of the people that are taking these and not actually implementing other lifestyle interventions or following an expert just simply become skinnier versions of their same unhealthy selves.
If somebody loses weight just by calorically restricting, but they don't lift weights, they're not going to change their body composition at all. They're just going to go from like 50% this and 50, let's just say for ease of simplicity, like 50% muscle, 50% fat. And then they just shrink because they starve themselves, or they go keto, or any of those other interventions. They just like shrink down and they're still 50-50. Now they're just tiny. They're just a tinier version. And that's not sustainable. That's like the recipe for rebound.
Now, what's fascinating is that one of the experts in this area, Dr. Seeds, does actually point out some very interesting research about semaglutide and muscle.
GLP-1s actually work on they work on the atrophy gene, they work on specific genes in muscle to retain muscle. That's proven. Also bone density. Do you know that? They work on osteoblasts to keep bone. Do you hear people talking about this? Oh no, because they're out there just promoting themselves because they can just follow a tagline. The emphasis I'm trying to create here is everybody wants that one magic thing. Well, yeah, this starts the process, has these amazing things, but you got to get other things going. And, obviously we've talked about this, the protein, you have to increase the protein to compensate because people aren't going to want to eat right at the beginning. So you have all these mechanisms that you can stop that. And in fact, you can build muscle on GLP-1s and you can build incredible lean mass on GLP-1s.
But here's the problem is that the mass majority of people taking this do not have someone like a Dr. Seeds in their ear showing them and walking them through exactly what they need to do in order to maintain muscle. So most people take this, their appetite is crushed, they're eating junk food, but just less of it, or just not eating enough in general. And so they waste away, but as soon as they come off the drug, their appetite comes roaring back and they gain back most, if not all the weight, sometimes more than what they had. Unless you follow a specific system during and after using it, along with following the advice of an expert. Because here's the thing is that, did you know that there is another way to lose weight besides just eating less and moving more? And it's just not talked about enough, but it's a scientifically proven method that I've used for myself to lose my dad bod, get abs, and it's the same method that I've actually used to help my clients get the body that they thought was impossible, but without actually giving up the things that they love. Because honestly, for us, family comes before all of this. But it's the reason that we do it. So to my moms and dads out there, anyone else busy, if you want to make some changes, I'd love to hop on a free call. The link is down in the description. Now what's crazy is that the reality of this is that although it's blown up for weight loss, the research now is showing that there are more and more uses way beyond weight loss. And Dr. Tina actually has pointed out there might actually be some better uses.
Plus it's neuroregenerative. So in my head, I'm thinking about neuroplasticity.
Yes.
I'm a chiropractor. Like that was my original training, was as a chiropractor. And it's all about neuroplasticity, right? Like we are retraining the brain and reprogramming tracks in the brain to get people out of pain, to get them moving, whatever it may be. And so if I said, this is a window of opportunity for you to not only make short-term changes and develop new habits, but we're wiring, in my hypothesis is that we're wiring the brain through the use of these neuroregenerative peptides.
My patients started teaching me that they could make those decisions. And I'm like, holy shit, this is really doing that. This is the things we thought it could do. It's doing it. So what's happened is there's a real rewiring that happens and people can make decisions.
Because of the effect of semaglutide and how almost in a way it kind of resets your brain, it creates this opportunity for all of these changes, these lifestyle interventions to take root. But like I said, I avoid pharmaceuticals like the plague because I just feel like if I can do it naturally, although yes, it's going to be harder, why wouldn't I do it the natural way and not be dependent on something? But I also can't help but think about all of the miracle drugs in the past that literally ended up in flames. So are we gonna see something similar to Ozempic? I don't know. But what is interesting is that we can compare the way Ozempic works and semaglutide almost in a way to the way that we cast a broken arm. So someone who breaks an arm, that arm is now not functional. It's not gonna be able to do what it needs to do. So therefore we have to put a cast on it, give it this temporary time to be able to heal so that when the cast comes off, now you can function properly and use your arm effectively. And in a way, this is the same thing. So in a similar way, I mean, if we're looking at our metabolism not functioning optimally, although it may not be, broken, because it's not like our metabolism breaks, but essentially it's not functioning optimally. Using semaglutide, along with an expert, along with lifestyle interventions, for a specified amount of time, in a way, is like creating this space for things to heal, as Dr. Tina actually points out.
There's another one where they show just really basic exercise. People who were moving versus people who weren't moving, who went off the GLP-1s, maintained better weight loss. So I think it gives you a window of opportunity. So if it is inducing a healing impact on the metabolic health of the individual, and they're on it for a period of time, they should become more insulin sensitive, not just because of the peptide, or not just because of the immediate impact of the peptide, but long-term they're healing. And then this gives you a window of opportunity to change those eating habits. Because the one other thing that we haven't talked about is it really puts the onus of control back into the patient's, they're in the driver's seat. I have way better control over my thoughts, my actions, my food choices, everything.
Now, as things heal, once you come off that drug, now you are put in a position where you rode with training wheels, so to speak, and now you can actually progress and do the things that you needed to do to begin with. So are you wondering, would I take Ozempic? Right now, I am cautious, but I am very curious. And honestly, my opinion has shifted on this even in the process of prepping for this video. Because honestly, my long-term health is what's most important to me because I've got a family. They kind of need me to stick around and be healthy.
This is the moneymaker. I'm not that good of an actor. This is how I get the jobs. I know that. I'm man enough to admit it.
However, what you need to look at is your own health risks. And if you are obese, the health risks that you're potentially dealing with right now, and whether or not the side effects of taking Ozempic far outweigh the risk that you have right now. But that's a choice that you'll have to make. Or instead, you could actually do this naturally without shelling out thousands of dollars. Because what's cool is that there is a hormone called leptin that actually interacts with GLP-1 and will naturally cause you to eat less. So to naturally eat less, we just gotta find ways to naturally increase our leptin levels, because those leptin levels tell our body that we're full, that we're satiated, that we don't need to eat more. And I want to give you 4 ways to actually be able to do that. The first way of doing that is just simply by eating a little bit slower. We're always on the go, me in particular, and we're wolfing our food down. It doesn't give our body time with that leptin signaling to actually tell us that we need to stop eating. The second way of doing that is just simply by limiting the amount of processed foods that you're eating. Don't worry about cutting things out. Focus on including whole foods, and that will naturally limit the processed food that you're eating. Now, the third way is actually by just simply eating more protein. Protein is incredibly satiating and will allow our body's natural hormones to gauge our satiety. And now the fourth way is actually fairly easy, at least it should be, simply by sleeping more. Our sleep is massively tied to how leptin levels operate in the body. But if you want a tried and true way of doing this, watch this video right up over here. And as always, go get strong, but first just go give your kids a hug like I'm about to go do, because I think that family matters more. And I will see you over there on the next video.